Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You ever been watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, and all of a sudden, it looks like the Buccaneers have scored a touchdown, but it doesn't count, and the cannons just go off anyway? Yeah, something like that. That's how I felt about the Buccaneers season this year. Every time I felt like the Buccaneers had just turned the corner, and I could give them the cue, hey, sound the cannons. The referees come in waving their arms. That didn't count. I let the cannons off anyway, only to have you tell me you have to do it over again. And this time, I don't get a touchdown. That's how I felt about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. Every time you thought you knew what this team was, they surprised you. Surprise! I'm not who you thought I was. They start the season out 1-3. And look, first and foremost, thank you for joining me. You are in the lab room. This is the lab follow-up of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How rude of me. Second of all, this team started out 1-3 to start the season. And you were saying to yourself, yeah, this is a pretty bad team. Greg Schiano, first-year head coach. He's going through the motions of learning how to coach in the National Football League. This isn't college. This isn't Rutgers. This isn't the Big East. You're not playing UConn next week. You're playing the Minnesota Vikings next week. You're playing the Atlanta Falcons next week. You're playing the New Orleans Saints next week. And so it's a big adjustment to make coming from college where you might beat up on poor Louisiana Lafayette. There's no Louisiana Lafayettes in the National Football League. Now, you might beat up on a team that's not very good. There might be a Kansas City Chiefs on your schedule, as Tampa Bay found out, hey, that's a nice win. That's an easy, nice 35-13 blowout victory. I'll take it. Many teams found that out this season. But everybody's good. And so I thought he was going to struggle. And he came out of the gate struggling, 1-3. Then the Buccaneers had a bye week, had a chance to kind of mull over some things, iron out some issues. And it always helps when you come off your bye and you play Kansas City. That always helps. But nonetheless, the Buccaneers proceeded to win the next 5 out of 6 games. And at the midpoint of the season, you look up and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-4. And at that point, you're asking yourself, are the Buccaneers one of the better teams in the NFC conference? Are they going to make it to the playoffs this season? Just a month and a half ago, we were asking, was this Bucs team any good? Were they one of the worst teams in the league? Now, all of a sudden, we're in week 11, and the Bucs are now 6-4 after winning 5 out of their last 6. They're going on the road, putting up huge numbers, even though it's against teams like the Raiders. And we didn't know then that they were going to be good, but the Vikings, they're still putting up huge numbers against teams. They blew out the Vikings. They blew out the Raiders. They blew out the Kansas City Chiefs. They're beating up lesser opponents, but yet they're still doing what they have to do. They're taking care of business. They go on the road. They get a tough come-from-behind win against Carolina, and all of a sudden, these Buccaneers can't lose. And they're 6-4. You're thinking, hey, maybe Greg Schiano is onto something. Because all along I said this Buccaneers team needs discipline. And we know Greg Schiano is a stickler for discipline. So I thought maybe he had started pressing the right buttons and he got this team to respond. And they may be dangerous. I was never buying that this team was a playoff football team. I never was sold. But I said, man, it's becoming increasingly harder and harder every week to doubt this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team because they just refuse to lose. And the thing that was impressing me the most is that they were going on the road and scoring points. I didn't expect them to go to Minnesota and put up 38 points, 37 points, 34 points, whatever it was, and do it in such impressive and decisive fashion. I didn't expect that. And they went on the road to Oakland, and Doug Martin had his coming out party. If you didn't know who Doug Martin was before, you absolutely knew who he was after that performance out in the Bay Area. And of course, Doug Martin is from the Bay Area. And so everything was looking up and up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then the end of the season happened. You go from 6-4 to losing 5 out of your final 6 to finish the season up at 7-9. And that's the type of season it was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lows, then the highest of highs, then back to the lowest of lows again. And all of this to me stems from the quarterback position and the play you get out of Josh Freeman. Now, to me, that's one of your biggest questions in the offseason. And I've already gotten my answer from Mr. Schiano. Head coach Greg Schiano already has come out and said, hey, we're evaluating the quarterback position, and we don't know who our starter is right now. There will be a competition. Of course, I'm thinking in his mind, he just wants to push Josh Freeman. He's still going to be the starter, but I posed the same question myself. At the end of the season, watching the up and down play of Josh Freeman, I said, is Josh Freeman the quarterback of this team in the present and moving forward? Is he the future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback position? Because you look at his numbers and you probably ask yourself, or you're asking anyone that will listen, what's the big issue? What's the deal? 27 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, over 4,000 yards passing. What's the big deal? I have a big issue with a low completion percentage. That's one of my pet peeves looking at the quarterback position. I don't like to see the football hit the ground unnecessarily too many times. You're going to incomplete passes in the National Football League. Pressure, miscommunication between you and your receiver, good play by the defense. The defense just called a good play. The defensive back just made a good play on the ball. It happens. The ball's going to hit the ground. But I don't want to see it hit the ground unnecessarily. And when you complete less than 55% of your passes, the ball is definitely hitting the ground unnecessarily. 45% of the time when you play the quarterback position and you throw a pass, the defense isn't making a good play. They're not in the right defense. The defender isn't making a great play on the ball. You didn't have a miscommunication with your receiver. You just didn't get it done some percentage of that time. And 54.8 isn't going to get it done for me. Not at this stage of your career. You're a 4-year veteran in the National Football League. Those are numbers that rookies post. 54.8. Not a seasoned veteran like yourself. And you're seasoned because you're in your 4th year and you've been a starter since day one. So those numbers aren't acceptable to me. Now, the 27 touchdowns, that's a career high for you. That's a great number. The 17 interceptions, they're down from a year ago. Those are all things that I think are positives that you take from this season if you're Josh Freeman. It always helps when you get a number 1 receiver. And you finally got some talent around you at the receiver position. Look what you were able to do. But the fact still remains, you had a couple of 4 interception games. Straight stinkers, duds. Those can't happen consistently. And you had more than one. One's, had an off game. Two's a trend. 3, now there's a problem. And I believe you had 2 stinkers, and you may have had one that approached that level. You may have had one game where you threw 2 or 3 picks. And so, too many instances where Josh Freeman gave the other team opportunities to win football games. And you can't lose to the St. Louis Rams at home. You can't do it. You threw 4 interceptions. You lose at home to the St. Louis Rams. And those are the types of games that you look back and you say, I don't know if Josh Freeman is the answer at quarterback or not. I feel like there needs to be an evaluation process, but I think Josh Freeman has the tools to be your starter. I think he's good enough to be a starter in the National Football League. But you can't have your quarterback be careless with the football and have 4 interception games left and right. And that completion percentage needs to come up. And I think Josh Freeman is a guy that his whole career has always been predicated on just throwing the football up and giving guys opportunities to make a play on the ball. Less about reading defenses and actually knowing what coverage the defense is in and picking them apart, and more so about just throwing the ball up, one-on-one coverage, and giving your receiver a chance to go up and make a play. He did a lot of that this year, and he had guys that could go up and make plays for him. Hence, the numbers were tremendously better. Hence, the interceptions went down. But the fact still remains, you're not completing enough passes. You're still throwing interceptions. 17, while that's better than last year, that's still a large number, especially for a guy that's been in the league 4 seasons. Anything over 15 interceptions to me is too much. Plain and simple. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be picked off. Balls are going to get batted into the air. Things happen in the National Football League. You're going to turn the football over. But I don't want to see more than 15 interceptions. That's enough. That's way more than enough for me. And Josh Freeman had 17. Last year he had 20 or 22. It came down, but once again, he can be better than that. But I think Josh Freeman should be and probably will be the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving forward. Okay, now that that's been addressed and we've been able to really talk about Josh Freeman in depth, let's go on to other matters of Tampa Bay Buccaneers football. Let's touch on everything and wrap this thing up. So, you found a gem at the running back position. Doug E. Fresh, a.k.a. Dougie, a.k.a. Doug Martin, a.k.a. the Muscle Hamster. This guy is an animal. I love Doug Martin. I had a buddy of mine try to sell me on the fact that Doug Martin was a slow, fat boy running back that was going to look his speed in the National Football League because he played at Boise State and the level of athleticism in his conference, the WAC, wasn't all that good. It was whack. And he was going to show his true colors in the National Football League. And I tried to tell him, when Mike Mayock tells you something, you listen. And I had watched plenty of Doug Martin in college football, and so I already knew what Doug Martin had to offer. Still, I did want to see what he was going to do in the National Football League, but I was sold because Mike Mayock told me that Doug Martin was a steal at the back half of the first round in the NFL 2012 draft. And so when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traded back up into the first round to get his services, I said, that's a good trade. That's a good move because you need a running back. And I said, this guy can do it all. Most running backs as rookies come in the league and at least one thing isn't NFL ready. And normally that's pass pro. Normally they're not ready to pass protect when they set foot in the NFL day one. Well, guess what? He was ready. Dougie was ready. Doug Martin came into the league ready to catch the football, ready to pass block, ready to run the football. You can't ask for it much better than that. He was ready to do everything, and it was all on display, and he rushed for over 1,400 yards. He averaged over 4.5 yards a carry. The man was a stud for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'll tell you what, they're not 7-9 without him. He was worth 2 wins by himself this season. Doug Martin is a player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving forward. You got yourself a running back for the future. Now, don't run him into the ground. The Redskins found a gem in Alfred Morris. The Buccaneers have themselves a gem in Doug Martin. Both of these backs had well over 300 carries this season. Don't allow that to happen again. Don't run these guys into the ground. 250 to 275 to 285 carries is where you want these guys to be. You start Michael Turnering guys and having them tote the rock 300 plus times, 3, 4, 5 seasons in a row. You will run these guys into the ground before they're 30 years old. You'll run these guys into the ground before they're 28. Don't do that. You have a prized possession here. Treat it as such. You look at this team offensively, that was money well spent in the offseason. Now, you didn't get what you thought you were going to get out of Carl Nicks. He got injured. Carl Nicks is a player at left guard. You don't have to worry about Carl Nicks. When he comes back and he's healthy, you'll be fine. Vincent Jackson, money well spent. I was floored by his performance this season. And look, I know Vincent Jackson can do that. I know Vincent Jackson is worth the money you paid him. But I just said Tampa Bay, their offense isn't flashy. Josh Freeman, I got questions and doubts about him. I just don't see Vincent Jackson having a monster season. Eye-opener. You're wrong, buddy. Vincent Jackson was the man this season. Vincent Jackson did it all. You need a 96-yard reception? Call on Vincent Jackson. You need somebody to go up and use that 6'5" frame to climb the ladder and go up and snatch the football out of the air in front of 2 defenders? Call on Vincent Jackson. You need somebody to pick up a crucial 3rd and 6 with an 8-yard slant? Call Vincent Jackson. You need somebody to go get it done in the red zone and get you a touchdown? Call Vincent Jackson. He was the man this year. Over 1,300 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. He did it all. Over 15 yards per catch. Vincent Jackson was a stud this season for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster. They got every penny out of Vincent Jackson. That was money well spent. The only free agent acquisition that probably wasn't money well spent was Eric Wright. And I really didn't agree with the move when they went out and got him in the first place. But they went out and got Dallas Clark as well. Money well spent. Dallas Clark came in, was a key contributor on his team on offense. Tampa Bay on offense, to me, if they can get steady play from Josh Freeman, I think they're set. You've got a number 1 receiver. You've got a stout offensive line. You've got a running back that can tote the rock. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can pass protect. You've got everything you need. You've got Dallas Clark, a reliable tight end. Luke Stalker is opposite of him. So you've got a 1-2 combo at the tight end position because I think Luke Stalker can be a very solid tight end for you. He's a perfect backup tight end in the National Football League. I like what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have on offense. Defense is where you start to ask questions. See, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense scored over 24 points a game. So they were fine offensively. The problem was they gave up over 24 points a game on defense. So they canceled out any goodwill that the offense was building. They canceled it out. And where the main problem is in the secondary. The front 7 of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're not set, but that's a foundation you can build with. You look at Gerald McCoy. You look at Michael Bennett. You look at Mason Foster, Quincy Black, Levante David. You can build around that front 7. Linebackers, that defensive line. You can build around that front 7. Now, they didn't get enough sacks. They didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback. But when they did get pressure, it was fierce. The game against the Cowboys, they absolutely harassed and beat up and beat into an oblivion Tony Romo. So when they got pressure, they were dangerous. When they collapsed the pocket, they collapsed the pocket. Roy Miller and company, when they started to collapse that pocket, and Claiborne and Daquan Bowers and guys started getting up the field, Bennett, they were a problem. But they only had 27 sacks. The Buccaneers need to get more pressure. They need to generate more pressure on the quarterback. But the front 7 isn't your issue. It's the secondary. Rondé Barber, you let him play as long as he tells you he's willing to play. As long as he's willing to play, you should have Rondé Barber on your roster if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He led your team in interceptions again. He was around the football again. And the guy is an ageless wonder. You keep him out there as long as he's willing to keep coming back. At the opposite safety position from Rondé Barber, the Bucs kind of had interchangeable parts. Leonard Johnson was one of the safeties that played. Also, Ahmad Black was back there. I like both of those guys. I think both of those guys are capable of holding it down, but there were too many lapses in that secondary, mainly from the cornerbacks. This cornerback group, very underwhelming. E.J. Biggers and company, they are just not a good group. They're not good. I had a buddy of mine, and a really good buddy of mine, and he's a huge Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And all he wanted to talk about all season long was the Aqib Talib trade. Even when the Buccaneers won 5 out of 6, and they looked like one of the most dangerous teams in the league, he didn't want to hear about that. He wanted to know why Aqib Talib wasn't still on his roster. And that's all he would talk about. And at the time, I couldn't understand why he wouldn't let that rest. Why he was deciding to beat this issue dead. I said it's done. What's done is done. Your coach has come in. He wants to set a precedent that I'm the only voice in this locker room that matters, and I will not be defied. I don't want any outside negative press in this locker room. I don't want any distractions. And Aqib Talib, his whole career, has been a huge distraction. So he got rid of the one distraction in the locker room, the one person that could cause an uproar in that locker room. He got rid of him. He shed himself of what he perceived as dead weight. And that's what I tried to relay to my buddy, but he wasn't trying to hear it. Talent is talent, he said. And look, we don't have a lot of it in the secondary. And we just traded away our most valuable asset in the secondary. That's what he said in so many words. I said, fine, I get what you're saying, but you're winning football games without him. Just relax. And then I saw, as the season progressed, exactly why he was making a big deal out of it. Their secondary stinks. And there's not a lot of talent in their secondary. And they need some help in that secondary. And Eric Wright wasn't the answer in that secondary. Because as the Buccaneers found out, Eric Wright isn't a number one corner. They paid him number one corner money. But he wasn't even a number one corner in Detroit, where they got him from. He was a number two corner. They asked him to come in and be a number two corner until they decided, hey, we don't want Aqib Talib anymore. Now you have to be our number one corner. He wasn't prepared to step up to that challenge. And honestly, if you want my opinion, Eric Wright isn't that good as a number two corner either. He's a guy that can be beaten on plays. For what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were paying Eric Wright, you weren't going to get that kind of production out of him. You just weren't. And so they had to learn the hard way, did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so they don't have any talent at the cornerback position. I think that was the one area of need that you had to lead this season saying, look, we got to address this and we got to address it fast. I mean, to me, that was the one position that really held this team back. Defensively, held this team back as a whole. You know, down the stretch, they played good teams with good quarterbacks that shredded this defense. And it was because the secondary could not hold up. It would always help if they could get more pressure. I mean, 27 sacks is not that many. But some of the guys on that defensive line did their part. McCoy had 5 sacks. Bennett had 9 sacks. You just need other guys to step up and do their job. But this team just couldn't stand up to the weight of some of these quarterbacks that came in and just absolutely carved them up. You're talking about Peyton Manning. You're talking about Drew Brees. These are quarterbacks that have the ability to put 40, 35 points on you in the blink of an eye. And that's what happened to this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense after they started the season 6-4. They just started losing football games, and they started playing against teams that can score. And when all the points ran out on offense, the defense couldn't turn it up. They couldn't stop the opposing teams from scoring points. And the Buccaneers just let this season get away from them. And it got to a point where it started to take its toll. In New Orleans, you get a 40-point drubbing at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. You don't score any points. You get players pushing coaches. It just got out of hand. Then it seemed like Greg Schiano was losing the locker room. You get anonymous quotes. Don't we all hate the anonymous quote? You get the anonymous quote in the locker room that I just want him to go back to college. He's a college coach. It's not going to work in the NFL. And so you just thought, man, this thing was just great. Everything was peachy. Everything was all good just a week ago. Now it just seems like the sky is falling in Tampa Bay. But they finished off the season with a win against an Atlanta Falcons team that had absolutely nothing to play for, but yet played all of their starters all 4 quarters and tried to win the game. And Tampa Bay was able to come out with a victory. Didn't see that coming. If the Falcons were going to play all their players, I thought that the Falcons weren't going to play all their players and Tampa Bay was going to win because of it. I didn't know that the Buccaneers were going to win despite the Falcons playing all of their players. And so that was a big win for the Buccaneers to close the season out. That was a huge win. It showed me that Greg Schiano had not lost this locker room. It showed me that Greg Schiano can get it done. It showed me that this team not only did not quit on him, but that they believe in him and his message for the future. And so there's some changes to be made in the offseason. Will Josh Freeman be your quarterback? I think so. I don't think there's another option right now that's better, that's available than Josh Freeman. And I don't think that you give up on Josh Freeman. It's not like he threw another 20 interceptions this season and he had 18 touchdowns. It's not like he regressed. He was better this season. It's just not at the standard you would like from a guy that's been in the league 4 years and going into his 5th season. It's just not what you want. You want a little bit more productivity. You want the completion percentage to be higher. You want the interceptions to be a lot lower. The touchdown passes are right where they're supposed to be. They're climbing. He's got a number 1 for the first time in his career. I expect those numbers to be even better. You need to surround him with even more talent. Get more receivers. You've got Mike Williams and you've got Vincent Jackson. That's a deadly 1-2 combination in the National Football League. Mike Williams just fell short of 1,000 yards receiving this season. We know Vincent Jackson went over 1,300. And so you got a deadly 1-2 combination. Be nice if you could add a shifty guy into the slot. Tyquan Underwood's nice, but he's not a slot guy. You need an absolute shifty jitterbug in the slot. A nice 5'9", 5'10" guy that's just impossible to deal with in space. You get that in the slot, and the Buccaneers could be a very dangerous team in the NFC South Division. But in the draft, with this 13th selection, if I'm Tampa Bay, I think that you need to get a cornerback. I think you need to address the cornerback position. If there's not a guy that you absolutely love, you take the next best player available on your board. Whoever is left, you take him. I think you are at a place in your franchise right now where you don't have dire needs that have to be addressed right now, like there's no tomorrow. Like you don't have a quarterback issue that needs to be resolved now or you won't be a good team next season. Your cornerback position sounds like a position that you need to address right now, but even if your cornerback position is as bad as it was a season ago and doesn't get any better, this team as a whole can still become better and mask some of the deficiencies in that secondary. So even though your corners aren't where they need to be and they're not good, that's not something that has to be addressed right now, like a quarterback position. Like not having a left tackle, not having an offensive line. Those are things that are pressing issues that have to be addressed now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You don't have any of those. So if the best player available is a defensive tackle, a defensive end, a tight end, you take them. If that's the guy you have on your board, that's the guy you project to be the best NFL prospect that's left on your board, the best value you can get for the 13th pick in the draft, you take him. I think you're in that kind of position that you can do that. But if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that pick needs to be a corner. And you just went Mark Barron. And I think Mark Barron is going to be a fabulous safety. Again, I talked about all those other safeties. Mark Barron is going to be a great safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for years to come. I thought Mike Mayock had a great analysis of Mark Barron. That was one of the best I've heard. He said, the ceiling for Mark Barron is the Pro Bowl. The floor for Mark Barron is the Pro Bowl. And that's the ultimate compliment because that means you're as consistent can be. And you're going to be a good player. You can't miss. You're a can't miss prospect and you're going to get it done at the next level. And I feel that way about Mark Barron. I think he has all the intangibles to be a really good safety in this league for years to come. And so I think you need to draft corner. You need to draft running back because I don't know what LeGarrette Blount is anymore. I thought that he had a terrible season, a very lackluster season. And I don't know if Greg Schiano really believes and trusts in LeGarrette Blount. If that's the case, move on. Part ways, get you another running back. Think you could use another one of those. Think you could use a more athletic tight end than Dallas Clark or Luke Stalker. Wouldn't hurt to go looking and sifting around to see if you can find one. I mean, the Buccaneers have other areas of need that they could look to. The offensive line, I think they're set, but you can always look for guys to upgrade. And that offensive line, I think they're relatively young. You have some pieces there along that line They have been there since the Gruden administration, and so they might be getting up there in age. You could take a look at those things. There's always areas that you could address. And I think looking at the receiver position, you're not done there. You don't have a lot of talent at receiver. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done a lot of swinging and missing at the wide receiver position. They swung and missed on Maurice Stovall. They look like they're going to swing and miss on Aurelius Ben. And so not really sure if you're set at receiver. Might do you some good to go sifting and sniffing around the receiver pile as well and see if you can find a nice slot receiver and maybe some other guys that provide depth for you on the roster. Who knows? But to me, cornerback is priority number one. You need help in the secondary. And you need more than one. You don't just need one corner. You need two. You need three cornerbacks. And you're in dire straits at the cornerback position. Not enough for you to mortgage the future for. Not enough for you to say, hey, we have to take a cornerback at 12. But if you get a corner in the second, in the fourth, and in the fifth, great. If you get a corner in the third, fourth, and the fifth, great. If you get a corner in the fourth, fifth, and sixth, great. You just need help at the cornerback position. And it doesn't have to be a first-round guy. It doesn't have to be a second-round guy. As long as you feel like you're getting value and you're getting a player that fits the scheme that you want to run on defense, by all means, have at it. But you need help at the cornerback position. And that's going to do it for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here on the Lab Follow-Up. I thank you for joining me. Stay tuned on this segment, as tomorrow we'll come back and we'll be talking Carolina Panthers football. A lot to get to there. A lot of changes have been made. And so we'll talk Carolina Panthers football, talk about the state of that franchise and what they'll look like moving forward. So come back tomorrow when we talk about the 14th team to pick in the 2013 draft, the Carolina Panthers, here in the Lab Follow-Up segment. So I thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.